Welcome to Outlook Video, the award-winning television show of 32 years, now on Create TV and a program of the Billy DeFrank Center. I'm Gabrielle Antolovich, and we are talking about World AIDS Day 2021. And it is amazing how many women have been passionately involved with World AIDS Day. The Reverend Doti Boon organized a huge World AIDS Day event at the Billy DeFrank Center in 1996. So tell me, Doti, what was your passion about HIV, AIDS, and World AIDS Day? How did it develop?
Well, I have so many friends that were coming down with AIDS, HIV, and it was also I had moved my practice, my church, over to the James Lake Mansion where the Center for Living with Dying was. So I would see a lot of these men coming in for counseling and to talk to people like the Reverend Janet Childs, and having a way of trying to deal with this in my own life because my friend Byron Floyd, who was a dear friend of mine, had gotten sick. And so I became interested in what was going on. And then my brother got sick. And so I had so many people around me that were close. And my receptionist, he got sick. And so it just became one of these things that everybody I was talking to, all my male friends, were very ill, but quite often had no idea what it was that they had. You know, when all of this started out, when the whole epidemic started out, it was so scary. And I want to tell a quick story when I say it was so scary. We were up in Guerneville at a place, a hotel that a friend of ours owned. And he said, Doti, and this was in the early 80s, he said, I'm sick. I've got a stomach ache and I feel lousy and nobody knows what it is. And the doctor says he thinks maybe I have various gut things and on and on and on. And he was the first one because the next time I saw him, he was very thin and very gaunt. And he said, they say I'm dying, but nobody knows of what. And I became interested. And I started talking to people because at that point in time, Guerneville was full of gay people. And you just, next time we went up, there were fewer. And that was happening. And then with my brother, and then with Byron, and with my receptionist. And it just kept seeming like every gay man that I knew was getting sick. And what most people don't realize, as a lesbian or bisexual, there was nothing you could do. You couldn't even donate blood. And they had a form that you had to swear that you didn't know a homosexual and you had never been in contact with a homosexual before they'd let you donate blood.
Oh my God, that is amazing.
Yeah, my partner, Corky, she went in to donate blood, and they said, well, do you know anybody that's gay or homosexual? And she just looked at him like, what? I'm here to donate my blood. No, they wouldn't take it. They felt that it was tainted just by you knowing somebody.
That's incredible.
So all of that was rolled up in, it was kind of like what happened here in the pandemic as far as it's so relatable. When they first came out with COVID, people had no idea who to trust, where to go, what to do, how did you know they were, that type of thing. And it's just a minor part of how it felt during an HIV pandemic.
So what made you want to organize a World AIDS Day in 1996 at the Billy DeFrank Center?
Well, because the Billy DeFrank had become a place where, especially men, there were very few women that had contracted AIDS, and so, but mainly men. And they were all talking about what are we going to do, and there's this World AIDS Day, and we'd like to celebrate. So I got interested because I knew so many guys, and I had been attending various things. I was attending a writing group at the DeFrank, and so we were writing stories about this. And so I became more active in helping put this together. And one of the ideas I had was having men from different countries whose parents were from a different country or they had been to represent a country. And we did a whole program, and they had speeches that they made up about being male, being gay during this time, and where they had come from, what their ancestry was. It was also kind of to see if it played out that there was any ancestral background that made you more aware of AIDS as far as your body reacting to it. We found that it was very much hitting the African American community. Okay, and that was my dear friend Byron Floyd. And when he got sick, I was really interested because of that. And because they hadn't been doing any studies, they hadn't seen what group was being hit. So when I put on the World AIDS Day for the Billy DeFrank, it was let's get everybody we know, all the guys that want to stand up. And there were 27 men who stood up and talked about a different country. And I made sure they had the flag of that country to kind of a little flag waving to talk about it, to give a global look at the HIV problem that was going on, that it wasn't just, as they were saying, they were calling it a San Francisco disease.
Oh, that can't be true. It was global.
Yeah, no, I mean, you forget, here in California, there are still people in California that say, well, that's San Francisco, or from there back east, that's Frisco, they were always, it's like, well, that's where all of those kinds of folks are. So it became like the San Francisco disease. So there was a whole other thing of, we have it in the San Jose too. This is a global thing. And so for World AIDS Day, that's why I was so excited to be able to, with Lynn Singleton and I, to put this together for the guys, because there was lack of organization right then. Men were so scared, they weren't even gathering in groups like you would expect them to. A lot of talk about it. But women, especially lesbians, it was real important for us to help our guys. Now, before that, in the 70s, I don't know how it was in Australia, but here, there was a schism. You had the gay bars, you had the lesbian bars, and the two didn't really get together. But what AIDS did is it brought that together, because as so many caregivers that were lesbian said, well, we got to do something. And so the women started getting together and helping the men. And in doing so, we fostered a cooperation between the two that has lasted until now, where we don't have that, well, I'm not going to talk to you because you're a man, or I'm not going to talk to you because you're a lesbian or whatever. It just it started flowing together, and we became a community. So it wasn't just about San Jose. I think this happened globally, where there was more of a connection between the two sides here. And now it's just, and when I saw that LGBTQ, it's so great to list it all together as one. And it used to be the gay group or the lesbian group or the bisexual group, but they were so singular. And now we're coming together.
We have Nicole Altimerano, who is the CEO for Silicon Valley Pride. Thank you so much for your passion for World AIDS Day, and especially the vigil. What is it about the vigil that you absolutely love?
World AIDS Day has always been near and dear to my heart. My wife, brother died of AIDS back when there was no mention of it. It was hush hush in 1990, right before a lot of breakthrough treatments came through. And I never got to meet him, but it's just always struck really near and dear to my heart. And I feel like, back then there wasn't a lot of ways for her to grieve. And I kind of do this in remembrance of him and for my wife, and to, pay homage to him that I haven't met, that had such an influence over my wife's life and, her family's life. And it just seems like that part has always been missing because I never got to meet him. And so that's why I think I'm so passionate and involved with World AIDS Day. That's what it's always meant so much to me.
So apart from your wife's brother, do you know a lot of other people who are living with HIV or have died from HIV? Well,
So I
AIDS,
know.
sorry.
So yeah, well, I mean, I know friends that are HIV positive, and I remember growing up, and I was younger when the height of HIV and AIDS came to light, and I was 10, 12 years old, and this was going on. So I was like, it just didn't never sit well with me as far as like the stigma that was attached behind it. And now being so involved in the community, I have heard of people living with HIV and thriving. Some like, it was kind of brought up casual to me in conversation, and I had no idea, that person was HIV positive or not. And, I remember just kind of, in these different circumstances, sitting there and thinking, say, oh, that really doesn't change anything about them. And I'm thinking, like kind of pausing to take that moment to recognize the stigma that is still there, and how it is so easy to overcome that stigma, and how it should be nothing to anybody else, to find out that somebody's HIV positive or their status. It doesn't really change who they are and what they do. And so I think that's another reason why World AIDS Day is so important, is because there's plenty of things that this life places stigma on, and a medical status should not be one of them, for sure.
Well, the first World AIDS Day actually happened in 1988, and that's 33 years ago now. So that's pretty extraordinary. And here you are, a young person who is involved. That is very heartening, because the people who were active, like in ACT UP, who really fought for the changes in the federal government, they are aging out. So it's really important that the younger generation keep the fire burning.
And in that way, I feel like I had the privilege of seeing how it affected, like, my wife, who is older than me, and seeing how that affected her in her young adulthood and with her brother, and the stigma that was placed upon specifically the gay men in our community, and kind of having that closeness and that attachment, and that with my wife, who it kind of just, I felt her, and I felt that sadness and that pain that she kind of endured through that entire time, and feeling helpless. And so because of that I think really opened my eyes to the different treatments that are out there, and learning more about it, learning how unfortunate it was that her brother didn't make it, and that if he were alive today, he could still be thriving. He was very politically involved. He worked with Senator Feinstein, who was back then a council person. He helped with Harvey Milk and that campaign. He was involved with ACT UP as well. And I was going through his things once, and he has all kinds of buttons from those times.
That's amazing. You know that there are 38 million people living with HIV, and over 36 million have died from AIDS-related illnesses. It's really quite shocking when you look at those statistics.
Yeah, it is, and it's unfortunate. I don't think there's been enough to, now we're progressing, but it's taken so long to progress. And I think everything goes back to, the fight for equality, and the fight for equity, and, equal rights, and, not having stigma, HIV positive, or, LGBTQ plus, queer, non-binary, transgender, Black, brown, Asian, indigenous. So I mean, that kind of fight has always been in me, and to know that something like this is still out there, that we have been hindering progress because of the stigmatized of this disease, and just the homophobia that's out there, it kind of riles me up, and wants to do more, and really wants to put a spotlight on it, and remember those that came before us. that, World AIDS Day, besides remembering and commemorating those that we have lost, it also raises awareness to what is still left out there to do. And, in any fight, we stand on the shoulders of the ones that came before us. And, we need to carry this on, or else, this disease will continue. And there's no reason for that. There's, plenty, that we could be studying, about this disease and how to eradicate it. And, we're making great progress, but it just seems like this should have happened 20, 30 years ago when it started. So we need to keep pushing forward and not forget about those that came before us.
So that's the message, isn't it? Doesn't matter what age you are, keep fighting the good fight. And thank you so much, Nicole Altimerano, who is the CEO of Silicon Valley Pride, who is fighting on many fronts. And thank you so much for being a proponent for World AIDS Day.
Absolutely.
Today we have Council Member Pam Foley talking about World AIDS Day. And thank you so much for coming to be with us today, because there are so many different stories to tell. So if you could please tell us, what is your passion?
Gabrielle, thank you for inviting me to participate in this World AIDS Day presentation. I'm extremely passionate about World AIDS Day and remembering all those who have passed from HIV/AIDS, and also remembering that our work is not done. My history goes back 25 years ago, and probably way before that, when the AIDS pandemic first came to light in the United States.
Oh my God, I had no idea.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Well, my brother, Tim, one of my older brothers, passed away of AIDS 25 years ago. And even before that, he was very active in the LGBT community, and a lot of his friends were dying of AIDS. So it became, very tragic. We all have friends, we all have family who've passed away from AIDS, and we forget that was a pandemic and still is a risk of death, although it's treatable more now than it was in the day of my brother's life.
Yes. Oh dear me. So when you found out about your brother, what did you do? What was the first thing you did?
Oh, so many stories. He had many lovers who passed away from AIDS. He had never been tested for AIDS or HIV, so we all sort of hoped that he didn't have it. But he got in a serious bike accident in Seattle, and they actually tested him without his permission for HIV. And from then, he actually died about a year later after learning what his T cell counts and what his risk was at that point. So once he found out, he lived his life very large. My brother Tim was a force. He loved life. He partied. He celebrated. He enjoyed family and friends. And he was one of my 5 siblings, and I miss him every day.
So what is it about your pen?
Well, there's a story behind this. My mother passed away a couple of years ago, and when she passed, she had a few things left over that she hadn't sold or hadn't already given away. And one of them was this AIDS ribbon. And it's made of ceramic, and I wear it very proudly on World AIDS Day. And I made sure that my siblings allowed me to take it and wear it regularly, and I do it. So I think of my brother Tim, but I also think of my mom and her love for her children and Tim and what he was going through during that time. So this pin means a lot to me. She believed that everybody was exceptional, that everybody deserved to be loved, not just her kids, but her kids' friends, everybody she knew. My mom had a huge, huge heart.
Oh, well, so do you, Pam.
Thank you. You know, it's so nice to be doing this and to even just think about him. That 40 years ago was the first World AIDS Day, I believe. 40 years ago, that's incredible. And 25 years ago, Rent, the musical Rent came out, which to this day, I've seen it several times. To this day, I can barely make it through because there's a character who dies of AIDS. And anytime I see a musical, a play, a show, whatever it is, with someone who is dying of AIDS, I can't get through it without breaking down in tears. It's so painful to see what people went through and continue to go through.
That's right. So for this year, what is your message for people who may not know the history that well?
We need to rock the ribbon. We need to make sure people are aware that while we have another pandemic right now, there have been other pandemics that have targeted certain individuals with considered behavioral traits, which was totally wrong. We know that AIDS was not transmitted just sexually. We know it was blood transfusions and a lot of other things. So we need to take away any stereotype or bias that we have towards the LGBT community. That's one. We need to continue to advocate and make sure that all the rights and freedoms that we have fought for, and advocates and like you and others and BAMEC fought for years and years to make sure that you had the right to marry and the right to do what you want to do and love who you want to love. We must not stop. And we must continue to provide the medication and the coverage needed for those who have HIV and AIDS. Period.
Wow, thank you so much. We've been talking with Councilmember Pam Foley, who has a heart for the issue as well as being a politico. And we really appreciate your perspective because it comes from both parts of you. And
thank you.
I want to thank you for that, and thank you for helping us remember your brother.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any chance we can get to remember those who've fallen from AIDS, we need to shine a light on that.
Great. Thank you again.
We love to get mail from you. Email us at comments@outlookvideo.org.
To contact us by phone, call 408-293-3040, extension 205.
Visit our website at outlookvideo.org.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/outlookvideo.
And connect with us at facebook.com/outlookvideo.
Within the LGBTQ community, we now have same-gender marriage, increasing visibility in mainstream media. We even have congressional leaders and also a lesbian mayor right here in San Carlos. So we're getting more and more visibility. Yet many in our community still struggle with stigmas, especially in respect to acknowledging ourselves via coming out to others outside of our community. To strengthen that community connection, Francisco Frankie Sapp, Program Director, and Azisa Todd, Lead Trainer and Events Coordinator of the San Mateo Pride Center, recently presented a panel discussion in parallel with National Coming Out Day, just this past October. Outlook Video is pleased to welcome to our guest for this month's show, Azisa Todd, to share the insights with this panel discussion. Welcome, Azisa.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. That was an excellent panel, which I didn't get a chance to participate with it, but I did get a chance to hear the whole thing and hear and watch the whole thing. And it was absolutely wonderful. So I'm going to ask you for a little bit of information. First of all, National Coming Out Day. Call me old school, but it was one of the few things I knew was an annual event. Tell us a little bit more how, when and how that started.
Yeah, so for us, when we were thinking about Pride, we were thinking about, in June, the LGBTQ Commission, which was, we had Tanya Beat, that was part of the planning committee, just amazing. Her team of commissioners were able to get all the cities in San Mateo County to raise the Pride as well as the Progress flag. And so still riding with that celebration and victory there, and recognizing the significance of Pride and what does it mean for LGBTQ plus folks in San Mateo County. I was working with my program director Frankie to figure out a way that we can support the celebrations there. And so while we were brainstorming some events, he was like, well, National Coming Out Day is coming up soon. And so we were considering some ways that we could, honor and celebrate that day. And we both decided, we want to bring the community together and celebrate the significance there, but also raising awareness around, what does it mean to come out? And what does it mean for folks that don't have the space or capacity to come out? And given that this year, 2021, this was the 33rd year celebrating National Community.
Yes,
so
33 years of this celebration, and nationally.
Exactly.
Nationally, that's terrific. That's really terrific.
It's important, and it shows, how important it is to celebrate, LGBTQ plus folks, but also raising awareness around, if folks don't have safe spaces to come out, or what's their coming out journey looking like, we want to find a way to uplift that. And so this is the first time that within San Mateo County, we've had an event honoring and celebrating that day. So it was really, really beautiful to work with the LGBTQ Commission, San Mateo County Pride Initiative, as well as Coast Pride, and partnering on, I would say, a really successful and really amazing panel. I was definitely moved by it.
I was as well. And what was nice to see was the diversity of, there were 3 people on the panel representing 3 different parts of our community, and as well as individually representing themselves. But it was so great to hear their perspectives on, and not necessarily that they shared their very, very personal stories. Some of them are, as we all know, and individually we know, are difficult and hard to retell, frankly. But they were very honest and candid about their feelings and especially with their resources. That was terrific that they got to share resources. But here we go. The San Mateo Pride Center is a wonderful resource. Thank you so very much for bringing these type of events. We look forward to other events that you'll have in the future, as well as next year's National Coming Out Day Pride event. So that would be terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Azisa. Thank you for all your work and joining out with video.
Thank you for having me.